welcome to Family Read Aloud. My name is Heather and I'm the Youth Services Librarian at Pennsauken Free Public Library. The theme for this year's summer reading is Imagine Your Story, and here at Family Read Aloud we are reading all about tall tales, which are stories that may have started off as true, but as they're told and retold again, some exaggerations might pop up. Like in this story, Peg and the Whale by Kenneth Apple and Terry Widener. Peg is 7. She's right there, and she wants to make something of herself, so she decides it's time to catch a whale. I hope you enjoy it. This is called Peg and the Whale. This was published by Simon & Schuster Books in 2000. Peg was born upon a bright blue sea. There she is, swinging from the bucking of the rigging of her parents' fishing boat, and there she is pulling lines and hauling sheets and dropping anchor and gutting fish along with the best of them. A big strapping lass, Peg was, but she wasn't one to do things in half measures. Anything she turned her hand to, she got good at. But she wanted more than that. She wanted big. She wanted better. She wanted best. She wanted to be the world's best fisherman. Now, she'd caught pretty much every fish that swam. She'd hooked herring, halibut, haddock, and hagfish. She hauled smelt, sole, sculpin, stickleback, and sturgeon. She caught a shark once, but she threw it back because it was too small. But Peg had her sights set higher, you see. She wanted to catch something really big. She wanted to catch herself a whale. A whale, her father said, is not a fish, Peg. It's a mammal. But Peg would have none of that foolishness. If it swims and spends more time in water than out, it's a fish, and I'm going to catch me one. Well, Peg was pushing 7, and she figured it was high time she made something of herself. So one night in harbor, she packed up her fishing rod, left her parents a note, and signed on with the whaling ship Viper. The Viper shipped out for Labrador that very night. It was big and oily and covered in barnacles. The crew was a mean-looking bunch, and its first mate, Bart Maxwell, could curse and spit better than all the others put together. "I want to catch me a whale," Peg said. "That right?" said Maxwell. "Can you throw a harpoon?" "No, but I can hook, bait, and cast a line quicker than you can change your mind." Bart Maxwell laughed and set her to work, swabbing decks. But Peg had a chance to prove herself the very next morning. There was a stiff wind blowing, and the captain's hat knocked right off his head into the waves. "A doubloon for the sailor who gets my hat," the captain cried. Bart Maxwell threw the first harpoon and missed the hat by yards. "Curse the wind," he shouted. He threw again, and again he missed. "A pox on these scurvy harpoons," he swore, snatching up another. "I'll do it," said Peg, bold as can be. She grabbed her fishing rod and cast her line. The hook sank through the hat first try, and Peg reeled it in. Bart Maxwell gave her a look that would fry a fish. "Nice try, my girl," he growled, "but I don't think you'll be catching a whale with that rod of yours." The next day the whale came. "There she blows," hollered a sailor from the crow's nest. Before the men could even get to the whaleboats, Peg was at the side with her fishing rod. She swung the rod back over her shoulder and cast it out with all her might. The whale took the hook and line and played it out faster than a tune from a jack-in-the-box. "I've got her," she shouted. She tied herself to the ship's mast and held on tight. Well, the mast nearly bent double, and that whale pulled the Viper through the ocean on a Nantucket sleigh ride. "That lass has hooked herself a whale," the sailors cried in amazement. "She's reeling it in," they cried. "She's reeling in a whale." "Nice fishing, girl," Bart Maxwell said, and in a flash he cut the rope, holding Peg to the mast. Peg sailed through the air, hit the water, and went skipping over the waves after the whale, still holding her fishing rod. Just as well, she thought. That old ship was just slowing me down. Then the whale stopped. "Aha! Plain tuckered out," thought Peg, reeling it in. "She knows she's met her match." Then the whale turned and came at Peg as big as a blue mountain. "I've got you," Peg cried. Well, Peg got swallowed whole. There was a tremendous roar of water, and then she was spluttering and splashing and tumbling and thrashing right down the whale's gullet and into its stomach. It was black as night, without moon or stars, only blacker. Peg lit a waterproof match. She reckoned there were enough planks and busted beams down there that she could shut up shop as a carpenter. A cod slapped at her feet. Seeing as she was feeling a bit peckish, she made herself a little fire, hung up her wet clothes to dry, and fried up some fish. After she'd eaten, she got dressed. She figured the only way out was up. So she took some of that busted up wood and the thigh bone from an old pirate skeleton she found and hammered herself a ladder. Peg climbed back up the whale's gullet and into its mouth. She felt a big draft coming from overhead. The whale sighed and whoosh! Peg was blasted right up through the blowhole. She reckoned she was about 30 feet in the air before she came back down and landed on the whale's back. Now she could see what was what. The Viper was nowhere in sight. Just as well, Peg thought. I didn't really care much for that crew. All in all, she was mighty pleased. She wanted to catch herself a whale, and here she'd gone and done it, riding a whale through the Labrador Sea. But after an hour or so, she figured it was probably time to be moving on. Well, she said, it looks like you're my ride back to shore. But that whale, it had a mind of its own, and it took Peg on a tour of the Arctic. Peg kept warm by doing jumping jacks and singing sea shanties. And when it got too cold, or the whale just decided it was time to dive under the ice, Peg just jumped back down the blowhole and slid right into the whale's stomach. It was damp and a tad smelly, but nothing she wasn't used to, and there was plenty of fresh fish for the eating. She built herself a little bunk to nap in. It was just like home, really. Darndest thing if she didn't start feeling a bit fond of that little whale. But Peg was also getting just a mite bored, and if truth be told, a little homesick. Well, she went back to work, sawing and hammering, and she made herself the longest rudder in the world to steer the stubborn whale. Didn't look like much, but it seemed to do the trick. She got that whale turned back south. A few days later, Peg caught sight of a ship on the horizon. Was that the Viper? No, that was her mother and father's fishing boat. Peg gave the whale a little pat. Good work, she said. The whale swam alongside the boat, and Peg stepped aboard. Look at how big that whale is compared to the boat. She was a bit stiff and frozen around the edges, but none the worse for wear. The whale blew up a big geyser of water and dived down into the sea. Peg, we were a little bit worried, her mother said. But it looks like you went and caught yourself a whale, said her father. Well, you know, said Peg, a whale's not a fish, so I figured I'd let it go. Very good then, said her father. Peg stayed on fishing for a while, but she was pushing 8, and she figured it was high time she made something of herself. After all, she wanted big. She wanted better. She wanted best. And she thought she'd try her hand at something new. And that is the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed that, and that you join me for next week's Tall Tale at Family Read Aloud. Have a good night.